right, we can go ahead and get started. Welcome to the February Office Add-ins community call. Everybody, thanks for joining. Good morning or good evening based off of your current time zone. We have two topics on our agenda today. Firstly, we'll be going over the retirement entity-based contextual Office add-ins, and secondly, we'll be going over Chrome's privacy sandbox and 3P cookies. Before we get started with our agenda topics of this presentation, we have a quick developer community survey that we would love for all of you to fill out. It's basically just a way for us to continue improving our call and to be able to learn more about yourselves and your time zones and different things like that. And it would really just help us in how we structure our current presentations. I'll also add the link in the chat if you're unable to click on this link. All right, and then regarding our agenda today, our presenters today will be Akshayta Pulugurtha, who's a senior product manager at Microsoft, Matt Geimer, who's also a senior product manager at Microsoft, and David Chesnut, who is a senior content writer at Microsoft. Akshayta, did you want to take over?
Yes. Should I request control or do you want me to share my screen? Whatever works.
You can request control.
Sure. Great. I hope everyone can see the screen right now. So let's begin. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. I'll be going through the details of Microsoft retiring entity-based contextual add-ins. But before we actually jump into the announcement, I'd like to provide a quick introduction to contextual add-ins and what they do. So essentially, contextual add-ins are a type of add-in that run on Outlook clients. And these add-ins activate based on certain text in a mail item. So users on Outlook can initiate tasks related to a specific message without actually having to leave the message or losing context. So contextual add-ins are just launched when by the user when the entity is highlighted, as we can see in the image on the right. So here you notice that there's an address in the mail item, which is gotten highlighted automatically because of this feature. So let's talk a little bit more about how contextual add-ins run. So contextual add-ins run via two parts. One is entity stamping and a regular expression matching. So in entity stamping, what we do is we highlight certain types of data in a message, such as addresses or phone numbers. And when a user clicks on the highlighted entity, Outlook is able to show a list of add-ins that are relevant to that specific identity. So that summarizes what entity stamping does. And in regex matching, we match the content of a message against a set of regular expressions that's supplied to us by the developer. So as soon as a match is found, Outlook is able to provide a control to launch that relevant add-in. So now that we've understood how contextual add-ins run in Outlook, I wanted to quickly get to the announcement aspect of it. So starting May 2024, we're going to be retiring entity stamping, and we will stop the highlighting of entities in Outlook. And once retired, these contextual add-ins will no longer be able to detect any entities in mail items to perform necessary tasks for specific scenarios. So if you do have an add-in that relies on entity stamping, it's no longer going to activate when the highlighted entities are selected. And we also have certain add-ins such as Bing Maps, action items, add-ins, and suggested meetings that rely on entity stamping. And support for these add-ins is also going to go away, and we will work on a deprecation path for these add-ins as well. However, we don't want to leave our developer community hanging. So we will continue to support regular expression matching and join meeting URLs, and I will cover a little bit more of it in the following slides. But as part of this retirement, we will be deprecating the following APIs that are listed on the screen. So all the APIs that are dependent on the above will also cease to work for contextual add-in scenarios. And these changes will only apply to the mail items that are created post-deprecation. So any item created prior to the deprecation should continue to work in the previous model. Now, over to the good news. What is going to continue to work? So, we do understand that this change may cause some inconvenience or disruption to the developer community. So, to help minimize those disruptions, we want to continue supporting the join URL and regular expression matching. So, we are developing an alternate path of the join meeting button in meetings. So this is activated by any online meeting add-in. So once we retire the support for entity-based contextual add-ins, the online meeting add-in will automatically transition to the alternative implementation. So we don't expect developers to really step in and make a lot of changes here. We're hoping that the transition will be seamless for our online meeting partners. And as previously mentioned, we will continue to support any add-ins that activate based on regular expression rules. So you can go ahead and configure your add-in with any of these regular expression rules. And what we've also listed here on the screen is more information on how you can update your add-ins going forward. And we will share these links in the chat as well. And we've also made this announcement previously on our blogs. So there's a link for that announcement here. This announcement was actually made on 5th Jan 2024, and the deprecation is slated for the May to June 2024 timeframe. So we request the community to take action on their offers before that window. And by the end of calendar year Q2, we expect this to be fully retired. So contextual add-in support based on entity stamping will completely be retired and deprecated. In case there are any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat or post your queries on GitHub. And we thank you for your cooperation. Do let us know if there are any open questions. We have a few representatives from our team who can address any queries over this call. Thank you.
That was great. Thanks, Akshayta. And if you have any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll go through them regarding this presentation. All right, and for Chrome and Privacy Sandbox 3P cookie blocking, Matt and David.
Thanks. Yeah, so hi, I'm Matt. David's here with me as well. We're going to talk about Chrome and the Privacy Sandbox, specifically around 3P cookie blocking. As I mentioned in chat, I don't have anything specifically to share from the Edge team. We're really covering impact for add-ins here and what's happening with Chrome's plans for their Privacy Sandbox. So sorry up front if you're looking for extra Edge info, but I think there's a lot of great content here we're going to cover. So just a quick reminder that cookies are just these little pieces of data that get stored in your browser. And there's these ideas of 3P cookies and third-party cookies explicitly are notoriously known for tracking data or advertising or other things that in general the internet as a whole has been moving away from as a sustainable item inside of privacy and other laws that are happening across the world. And how you determine what a 3P cookie is very interesting, where you have to look at the domains that are being used and how access is occurring between those domains to try and get access to the cookie stored in your browser. And specifically, there's this idea of this public suffix list and effective top-level domain to help cover some of the specific country codes or other domain patterns that may not be easily identifiable for subdomains within. And if you want to learn more, there is a link to go down the super interesting knowledge that's there. But we're really going to focus on what's happening with those third-party cookies and specifically Chrome. So Chrome announced that they're going to be working on this thing called Privacy Sandbox. And they did start to block now third-party cookies in Chrome with a 1% rollout. There is a plan to, by the end of this calendar year, ramp to 100%. And there is a link again in this deck if you're looking for updated timelines. I checked this morning. I don't think there's any change as of right now, but they do have their own timeline site, and you should take a look at that if you want the most up-to-date information on their plans. There's a few alternatives that have been suggested to the third-party cookie and how it can be used. Those things aren't 100% across all browsers. So things like the related sets is something that Chrome's suggested, where you could tie domains together to say these domains are a set and they go together and they shouldn't be considered third parties to each other. But there's some restrictions there and various other items that need to be taken into consideration when thinking about using those. And so, in general, we haven't seen a good next step for I need to just keep using cookies. Here's what I should do. So really, this is again about how this is going to impact us right now and what we can expect moving forward. So there's three main areas. Authentication. So authentication in the browser explicitly. Again, this is all just in the browser in Chrome. Authentication relies on cookies in general, and with this new third-party blocking, there is some impact, and we're going to show a demo here in a little bit for the Get Access Token API in Office.js and SSO Silent and MCell.js. And what happens is you're going to have to force interaction with the user because there won't be access to the cookie in the browser that Office or MCell needs to do the authentication flow. Again, we'll see a little bit more about that in a minute and a demo. Cross-domain communication via cookies, that's literally what's being blocked. But basically, it's, if you have something in an add-in that you are talking across domains through a cookie, storage settings, etc., like that won't work, and you're going to need to make sure that you have different approaches on how you do storage there. And then lastly, the dialog API. In the past, there were instances where a pattern might be to use a cookie to pass information back and forth, and we do have this in our documentation already. This is even more true now with this change that's happening in Chrome, which is make sure you're using the message parent and message child methods in dialog API. We've also updated other parts of our documentation to call out where things like storage partitioning needs to be of a specific concern, and making sure that you're aware of that situation for the change that has happened with storage partitioning, which is more of a standard than the actual cookie blocking. All right, David is going to show us a demo here for our single sign-on sample using Chrome in incognito mode with 3P cookies blocking turned on. And I'm going to talk afterwards on how we can actually improve some experiences for managed devices with authentication. So, David, do you want to start sharing the demo?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And get this out of the way. There we go. So hopefully you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So I have here, I've got Chrome browser open up and it's in incognito mode. And you can see in this text at the top here, it says you've enabled testing third-party cookie phase out. So this is something you can turn on. Google has instructions on how to do this, and it's handy if you want to test like how things are going to behave. And so this is the way we're going to test this add-in. I'm logged into my developer tenant, and I've sideloaded one of our SSO samples over here on the right, and you can see in the task pane. Basically, it'll go connect to OneDrive, grab a list of files, and put them in the spreadsheet over here. I added a couple of extra checkboxes to it so that we can play with the call to get access token, so that when you call get access token to say, hey, I want the SSO, from SSO, I want the access token that I'm going to use to do my on behalf of flow to graph, you can pass these parameters that say, will I allow a sign-on prompt, which would allow Office, if the user's not signed in, it would then prompt them to sign in, or if they haven't consented to the add-in, they could prompt them to consent. And you can indicate if this is for MS Graph access. So we can play with these parameters and just see how the behavior changes. I'll leave them all at true right now, and I'm going to click on Get OneDrive File Names, which is going to call Get Access Token. And you'll see here's that interaction that Matt was talking about, where it says, we get the sign-in dialog, says for added security, Office needs to further verify your account. So I'll go ahead and click on Sign In. And you see it pop up. I don't know if it might have went too fast. It popped up another dialogue. And then Matt, it's a little different.
David and I were chatting this morning before the call, and we noticed that this behavior happened where what you see just happened now we're getting back an error code of 13007, which is saying, in our case here, that there's either account mismatch or there's an issue with his manifest in dev testing. And the account mismatch here is most expected, and what you're supposed to do is fall back. So this is actually the fallback code going back to MCell. This is behavior that might happen, and you should be able to handle it in this same fashion. So there's nothing incorrect about this flow, but it was just very interesting behavior to find. So you can go ahead and go do that fallback. And what's interesting is we'll see that get access token actually works after this if we want to use it. But that pop-up is really the experience you're going to see. So that brief pop-up is the experience you'll see for both Office signing in, getting access to that cookie in the browser from your sign on to Office all up, like into Excel through Azure Active Directory or Entra now. So it is very interesting. If David clicks it again, it's going to actually use get access token behind the scenes, and you shouldn't see anything. You shouldn't see anything.
Now it's doing
anything
SSO.
popping up because it actually has the ability to do it. But the pop-ups there are the main thing you're going to see, and because you're already signed in to Office, you should only just see that brief flash pop-up in either the MCell JS fallback or in the get access token provided by Office JS. And it's interesting to note here too that the fallback when we're running on the client on a Win32 or other native client, not in the web, we don't get that SSO experience. The user actually has to sign in, and the reason that you get this sort of SSO experience where you have the pop-up and then you don't have to sign in is because the browser here has that cookie again. So it is interesting to call out that MCell.js as a fallback has similar SSO experience in Office on the web as the Office JS get access token API call. David, if you want to turn off I don't know. I think that since you've signed in, we'd have to take you all the way out of sign you out, right? But I don't think that we'll be able to show. Just fall back. If you don't,
I'd have to sign in again. I don't know if you want to wait for me to do that, but I could just talk about if these are set defaults, then you're telling Office to not prompt. And if it needs to pop up that little dialog that we saw that says, hey, I need to do some more verification, it won't do that. And instead you'll get back, I think it was error 13002.
Correct.
And so you see that behavior. So just pointing out, like if you set these defaults in your when you call get access token, then you can actually block that pop-up, and then the SSO process will fail with 13002 error.
Yeah, and those are set on the auth options that you pass as part of get access token. That's right. Yeah. So
yeah.
No locks at the moment.
Great. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Hey, Preethika, could you share the deck again?
Yes.
Thanks.
That's
Yeah, we just have two more slides, maybe even just one more slide. No, two slides, I think, and then we'll hand it back over. Thanks again, David, for showing that. Again, the key thing here is interaction will be required to some level. You're going to see that little pop-up happen. Here, I'll take control. Thank you. And we're really just trying to show that it does work. It is still doing the SSO when possible, but there are some specific error codes and again, the auth options where you have to be able to allow prompting to the user to make that happen. There is a way to help alleviate this if your users are on a managed device. And so there's a great blog post from the Entra identity team that outlines how you can actually connect the device identity of the logged in user to the browser. And that includes every browser that you see here, Edge on Windows, Chrome, Safari, and Firefox through various methods. Some of them are registered keys, some of them are policies, but admins can roll that out to their users. Again, it's for managed devices, so that would be for the Entra ID platform and making sure that those options are enabled. And again, Chrome is included here. that's great. Each item here is actually just the link from the blog post that's in the deck. So if you end up just clicking to that blog post, Emily Lauber wrote that, and she put some great content in there. And so really the big takeaway here is that the plans for 3P cookie blocking in Chrome, it is progressing. They announced it, they started the rollout, it's at 1%. There are a few additional things around, like enterprise Chrome and other things. I don't have full information on that, but you should check with the Google site on their various progression schedules for the impact to SSL flows. You need to make sure that there's interaction, so making sure you pass the appropriate auth options. Don't use cookies to do cross domain communication or storage, and if possible, suggest to your users, if they're on managed devices, to have them connect their browser identity and device identity. So those are the key things. I see a few things in the chat. I'm happy to go ahead and answer them on the rest of the call. Thanks so much.
Great. Thanks, Matt and David. Once again, yes, feel free to add your questions in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and answer them in the call today.
Okay, so Preethika,
David, do you want to go over? Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So I just wanted to share a community spotlight on community contributions and recognize contributions from folks. So Martin van Stam and Eric Legal, and I just realized I didn't put your names on this slide. I apologize about that. But they're both MVPs, and they've been doing a lot of great helping us out with the GitHub samples that we have for Office add-ins. Martin's been helping out a lot with the Blazor samples, keeping them up to date, helping answer questions. And Eric's been doing a lot of work in Outlook. He's got a new PR coming through with a new sample for Outlook. And he's also been helping with a lot of developer testing feedback with the new Outlook client. So thanks to both of you for doing that. It's very much appreciated, and anyone's welcome to help if you want. And you can also earn. There's this badge in the upper right corner that you can earn if you're helping with contributions to some of our open source locations, like for docs and samples. I did want to point out, Martin has a Twitch live stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I've got the times there: 8 p.m. CET and 11 a.m. Pacific time. And if I know we have some VSTO COM developers on the call, and so if you're trying to jump into Office web add-ins and trying to learn the ropes of how to build add-ins with the new framework, I'd encourage you to go check out his live streams and ask questions and see what you can learn. He has just decades, I think, of experience with building Office solutions, and nowadays doing Office web add-ins. He's been through the hard parts to learn and figure it out, so he can definitely share information with anyone. So anyway, all their social media links are here, so go check out their stuff and follow them if you want. And again, just thank you to both you, Eric and Martin.
That's great. Thanks, David. And yes, once again, thanks, Martin and Eric. We really appreciate your work in the Office add-in developer community. Moving forward a little bit. So now on to our Q&A section. We have 2 questions for today's call. Firstly is, I'd really appreciate a bit of best practice and guidance on how to protect the add-in source code from our users. I know some parts of the code can be placed on the server side and we can work with obfuscation of the code, but some of the best practices on this would be very helpful. So I linked the following documentation that goes over the privacy and security for Office add-ins. I think a helpful section for this particular scenario would be the developer's permission, choices, and security practices, and that gives more insight into the best practices on how you should move forward here for your add-in. Secondly, this is a bit of a lengthy question, so I'll summarize it, but the full question is on the slide. But essentially, it says we are facing significant issues with Microsoft SSO integration. For one, we'd expect there to be an API that does smart caching of the access token. Instead, each call generates a new access token, which can cause throttling errors. So we need to handle various checks, determine whether or not to fetch a new token in order to avoid these errors. And a bigger issue is that it seems like the issuer changes. So there's some mismatches between Microsoft's SSO and the access token for the marketplace review team. So their validation is failing. So in regard to this entire scenario, I appreciated the feature request at the bottom of the page that's asking for official examples. I also linked towards the SSO sample that David's been working on and does a lot of great work on, and I think that could be a good starting point to learn more about a couple things. This one in particular is for Outlook, but I do think it would be a good starting point. And then we also have quite a bit of documentation on Microsoft Learn as well on SSO, but it would be great to add a feature request if this is something that you want to see specifically and sample for, and then we can work from there.
Hey, Preethika, I just want to add here too, like that GitHub issue has had some traction on it from David, which is great, and there is a couple of things in documentation that we've pointed to on the Entra side around token validation that I think helps in the situation. So if you want to find out more, that link to the GitHub issue, it definitely has some additional information. And from the caching perspective, being one of the people that works with the SSO side quite a bit, like I understand around caching and tokens and the asks there. We're definitely very, very interested in feedback and are working to improve it. So any feedback or feature requests would be greatly appreciated.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. All right. So those are the questions that we received for this month's call. Once again, some quick PSAs if you're new to our community. There's a link to our overall documentation here that provides a lot of information on different scenarios that you're able to complete with Office add-ins. And in regards to some quick starts on how to just quickly get started for different hosts, you can go ahead and click on these links. And then we have the links to our samples, of course, and then to Script Lab. And if you'd like to join the Microsoft 365 developer program and get even more involved, you can always join here. And we have a link to our Office scripts documentation as well. So I see this question in the chat about how to submit questions. So I'll talk about it here a bit more, and I'll also answer it in the chat. So firstly, if you have any technical questions about Office add-ins, so this is regarding more generic things about our APIs and on how to have a solution to a certain scenario, you can go to our aka.ms Office add-ins dev questions page, or also post a question on Stack Overflow and we'll respond there. If you find an actual product bug, you can go to Office.js and go submit this bug there. So if you're using an API and you're running into an issue that you don't expect to be occurring, you should go add an issue there, and then the folks that actually work on that API will go ahead and triage it and be able to give you a response. And if you have any feature requests or ideas that would be helpful for your scenarios, we have an M365 dev suggestions page, and you would go ahead and add all of those suggestions there. And this is a link to all of our developer community calls. So these are all of the other calls that are encompassed in the Microsoft 365 community. So we have a link to each one and the cadence that they occur. And then we also have a link to all the calls and assets at the aka.ms M365 PNP page. So that would be a good resource to see if there's any overlap between any other features that you're using and if these calls would also be helpful. All right. Thank you for joining today, everybody. Thanks to our presenters for presenting. The recording will be available on the M365 Community PNP YouTube channel. All our past calls are also available currently, and our next call will be March 13th at 7 a.m. Pacific time. I'd once again request folks to go ahead and fill out that developer community survey before you hop off today. If you have a couple minutes, it would be really helpful for us to continue improving our call and the structuring of how we're currently having it. And you can always find our agenda at this link here the day before, and feel free to submit your questions for the next month's call. It's not set up yet for next month as it ended today, but responses will be open after this call today for the next month's call. Great. Thanks, everyone.